Happy Sunday, Thursday. Aren't you so happy that the sun came back out? I am. I'm also happy that I feel like we should have a celebration because we've moved in the Gospel of Mark to the 3rd chapter. Today is the first day. It's chapter 3. Chapter 2 was a tad bit long, but here we go. So, let me read this first. So we're going healing on the Sabbath. So we're in Mark, Gospel of Mark, 3rd chapter, for those of you who may want to grab your Bibles. We're going to go through verses 1 through 6. And he entered the synagogue again, and a man was there who had a withered hand. So they watched him closely, whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man who had the withered hand, "Step forward." Then he said to them, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they kept silent. And when he had looked around at them with anger, because being grieved by the hardness of their hearts, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. Then the Pharisees went out and immediately plotted with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. So in your little caption today, I said, be very careful not to get hung up in so many religious rituals that we miss the opportunity to serve. So we want to kind of get through this little healthy drink because I have some frozen items here. This doesn't take long, but what I want to do, for those of you who are familiar with the Bible, of course we are bringing on everyone, so I can just tell you for a moment that Jesus was probably Jesus was the best storyteller ever. And one of the things that made him such a great storyteller was his ability to speak in parables. And though today, when we're in church, a lot of us will take a parable and we'll analyze it all week long before we preach about it on Sunday. And so that makes it even greater when you think about what Jesus did, because he didn't do that. When he did parables, they were like right there on the spot. So all of the things that we think of and the conclusions and analogies and the theological backgrounds that we come up to describe the parable really aren't what Jesus was doing. Jesus was looking at the individuals that were there and giving them an opportunity to look at a situation and actually judge the situation unknowingly and come to that judgment with a clear blindness of the reality of what they had just judged, if any of that makes sense to you. I mean, it's so awesome. So I'm going to give it to you the same way that Jesus did it. And I'm going to give you an example. So here we are. I took all of my garden furniture in because there was going to be this huge storm last week and we're moving into the fall season. So when you think about the fall season, what do you think about? You think about the holidays. The holidays are quickly approaching. And though holidays are like that ambivalent thing that's going on with us. It's like a love-hate relationship at once. As soon as you think about the holidays, there's like this smile because it's the holidays, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, and it's New Year's, and it's a chance to see your relatives. And then there's that other piece of that, okay? Because we all have relatives, and then we have relatives. We have the relatives that we love, and we have the relatives that we're like, is it next year already? And so imagine, though, you're dealing with some of your new relatives. Who are the new relatives? The new relatives would be the in-laws. It is like, why did your brother decide to marry that woman? You know? And is he really going to bring her to Thanksgiving dinner? And so it happens, and even though she knows that you guys feel that way about her because of her, just that thing that she does, you know? And she knows that thing that she does because it makes half of your relatives that can't control their behavior roll their eyes in front of her. So she comes to the holiday Thanksgiving dinner and she does that thing that she does. And you guys like roll her eyes. But this time, she does that thing that the mother, your mother, my mom can't stand. And we all know that our mothers are the best mothers in the world. They can tolerate anything and anyone, you know, way beyond our ability to do that. They have a patience that is like the patience of Job. So this time she does her thing, and it really gets to your mother, so much so that it is so offensive. But it's nothing you can do because you're in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. But now we know, oh no, he won't bring her to Christmas dinner. And so he brings her to our Christmas dinner anyway, okay? So this is what this parable is about. This parable has, not this parable, but this scripture says, I've been talking to you over the last couple of months. Jesus is just like building. You know, the Orthodox Jew, the Pharisee is like, really, he's like testing them. He's gotten on their nerves. He's just kind of, the last time that he was in the synagogue, he did some healing. And it just kind of, you know, it was in the name of Jesus. It was declaring himself to be the Son of God. And they're like, this is blasphemy. And so now he knows that coming back into the synagogue is not what he wants to do, but he comes anyway. And so it's just like the woman that comes to Christmas dinner anyway. It's like, how dare you? Really? Seriously? And so here we are, after the Pharisees have gone after him for 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about the disciples and Jesus were walking along the road and they decided to pluck some of the corn and eat the corn, and that was on the Sabbath day. But there you're talking about very ritualistic stuff. So now we're talking about the healing on the Sabbath day. Working is considered, healing is considered work. Obviously plucking and winnowing the corn last week was working, but this is different because we're talking about livelihood. We're talking about life. So now it's like healing on the Sabbath and keeping someone alive. And so to even understand that, so I tried to give you a little background about the audacity for him to come back into the synagogue as far as the Pharisees were concerned. It's kind of like the woman, the sister-in-law that comes to Christmas dinner after she's like turned your mother off on Thanksgiving. So Jesus comes anyway. This talks about, you know, because a lot of times when people think about Jesus, because when we think about Jesus and when we speak about Jesus, we're talking about the love, the passion, you know, the Jesus that is the kind Jesus, you know, very seldom talk about when he was angry and he turned over the tables in the temple. And so this tells you that, you know, you're not dealing with a softie here. You know, Jesus has some to him. And so he's like, I'm coming up in here anyway. And not just that, let me just give you a little background also on healing and this association with work and what could be done and what couldn't be done on the Sabbath. This thing was so crazy. Not just the craziness of how they would take a law and add so many things to it that had nothing to do with the intent of the law, the means over justifying the end. It's also talking about the devout Jew. And so the devout Jew, I mean, this did come from somewhere, and it came from the fact of honoring the Sabbath day. And it, even though they had a skewed sense of what they were doing, you have to look at their loyalty and their devotion to the rest and the honor of the Sabbath day. So much so that it was known that when they were taking over Jerusalem, the opposing enemy knew that all they had to do was to come after these guys on the Sabbath, and they literally could take them out. Because the Jews' devotion to the Sabbath was honored so much that he was basically signing his death certificate when he was in war on Sundays, because they simply they would not defend themselves. Not only would they not go out and attack, but if you attack them, they would just roll over and die. And so they stopped recruiting, the Romans stopped recruiting the Jews to even fight for them on that basis, that they knew that everybody knew how they were on Sundays, and they literally could just massacre them on Sundays because they would not lift their hand to fight back, to defend themselves, to keep themselves alive, because it would be dishonoring the Sabbath. So that's what's in their head, along with everything else. And so that's what you're looking at in this situation. So what does Jesus do with his self? I was about to say his dad. So he comes into the middle of the synagogue. And so the man with the withered hand, when they say the withered hand here, this is a New King James Version. If you look at the historical King James Version, it says a man with a paralyzed hand. And when you look at the terminology for that, or the historical meaning of that paralyzed hand, it suggests someone that wasn't born with a paralyzed hand. And then when you look at the Josephine historical facts, it says that this man was actually a stone maker. And so with a stone maker, his hands were his livelihood. But because he had been a stone maker and worked for many, many years, he was too proud to beg. So he sought the help of Jesus. And so it happens to be on the Sabbath that he's in the synagogue. And so the man is in his little corner in the synagogue. So Jesus comes in, coming back up into the synagogue, back up onto your turf when I know you don't like me. And then he pulls the man out. He pulls the man out and he says, come out from where you are sitting in the synagogue, to be front and center. So there's no misunderstanding, no mistaking that what I am getting ready to do, I am doing on purpose. And so he tells the man to come out into the center, to present himself, to show his withered hand. And so why is he doing this? He's doing this obviously for two reasons. One reason I think we overlook sometimes is that, okay, the sister-in-law comes to Christmas, you open the door, and you're like looking, do you have like fresh flowers from mother? Do you have something, for your behavior the last time? So you're kind of like giving her an opportunity to redeem herself. And so I believe that Jesus was giving the Pharisees an opportunity to show some sympathy here. So he asked them the question immediately, and that's why I think that, because he asked the question immediately, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath? Is it lawful to do evil on the Sabbath? And so he's making them think about this, because obviously it is a good thing to heal someone who is in dire distress. Obviously it is a good thing to enable someone to begin to take care of themselves again. That is a good thing. And the Pharisees knew that. So to answer this question would be to go against what they're claiming Jesus is doing wrongfully. The second thing is that Jesus wants the man to come out so that he can demonstrate with a word. He speaks to this man and his hand is restored. No one else has the ability to do that. So over and over, he's proving to these Pharisees that this thing that you're in, this ritualistic ceremonial practice of doing X, Y, and Z on the Sabbath, why was that rule ever put in place? To honor God. It is a dishonor to God when we overlook our fellow man in need. So that is the main difference between the two. One is that you're so into this ritual, this ceremonial law thing, that you forget the end. The end, a means to the end, is to tell people to honor the Sabbath day. Don't do these things, don't do these things on the Sabbath. But the end result is that we may honor God. And the thing that honors God most is when we love our fellow man as ourselves. That is what Jesus said is the best commandment, along with loving the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. So there you have it. And so he does this, and he does it in front of everybody. So here's the other little thing. Quick, and it's 6 verses, but it's a quick point to it. But the other thing that we need not miss is that as soon as Jesus did this, he looked at their anger. I'm going to talk about that too, as a sidebar. He looked at their anger in their eyes. They're just like infuriated. So the sister-in-law comes strutting through the house on Christmas, no flowers, no nothing, and then she wants to sit at the head of the table, and you know how we are with relatives. It's like everybody knows you out of place or whatever, but how many people actually say anything? Nobody says anything until you're behind closed doors or the next day or whatever. Very seldom do people, you don't have the real powwows at the holiday, well, not at the sophisticated holiday dinners. I'm sure it's probably something, some people would have been like, oh, I know you didn't come over here and ring the doorbell and close the door in her face. But then others will just smile and open the door or whatever. And so you have this woman and she sits at the head of the table. And so Jesus is looking, just like everybody at your dinner table is looking, and you can tell that they're angry even if they're not saying anything. So Jesus is looking at these people when he's healing this man, and he was just disgusted with the anger and the hatred in their hearts, and they're parading themselves as Jews, as the Pharisees, as the religious lawmakers, and they have no sympathy, no concern whatsoever with human need. Totally just diametrically, diabolically opposed. Just, and I'm stressing that because we do it all the time. We do it all the time. When we think ourselves to be doing good, we're actually not doing what we ought to be doing. We get so hung up into where someone ought to sit, whose name is on a program, that we miss the point of fulfilling the needs of people. We just, as long as we're carrying our Bible, we're going to church on Sunday, we're going to Bible study on Wednesday night. But at the end of the day, are lives being changed? Are people getting it? And if we look around, I don't think so. I don't think we believe in what we're selling. Because when we think about health and what we're trying to do to restore your health and to bring you to a sense of confidence in your immune system, what really makes people sick? And when you think about what really makes people sick, the cause, you'll find that all these pills are just addressing the symptoms. Because you won't find peace, love, and joy in a pill. And it is the opposite of that, which is destroying people's immune systems. Yes, we're overeating, but why are we overeating? Because we're sad, we're depressed, we're anxious, we're fearful about something. It is the fear, it is the anxiety, it is depression, it is the inability to forgive. These are the things that cause high blood pressure. These are the things that cause heart trouble. These are the things that cause Alzheimer's. We talk about the number one thing that lands people in hospitals. We talk about heart disease, obesity, diabetes. But at the end of the day, there are more people being institutionalized for mental disorders. And now that mental disorder comes in the shape and form of Alzheimer's and dementia. Where does this come from? It comes from arteriosclerosis. This comes from hardening of the cerebral area in the brain, the cortex. And where does that come from? That comes from years of just being angry and mean and just angry and mean. It's the child that has the temper tantrums at the holiday dinner that nobody wants to address, that they're going to be the reason that he becomes a teenager that is highly assertive, a bully, then a young adult that just, every now and then goes off. And then it's the old person that comes to live with you and you're wondering, was I ever this person's child? Because they're just so cantankerous, it's just unbelievable. That didn't happen overnight. And so when we see these things happening, we have to do something to just kind of adjust the situation. So the Bible says, if you will follow my statutes, none of these diseases will be upon you. Do we really believe in that? Or do we think that's just some shallow assertion that God made? No. But what is following and being obedient? It's following and being obedient that we become the people that express the fruit of the Spirit. People that are filled with love and joy and peace, long suffering. Not people that are angry and fearful and anxious. And so when we don't do those things, these diseases come upon us, and then all the other things that come along with it, a lot of the symptoms, a lot of the habits that feed into the original cause. And so anyway, these same people that are so strict on the Sabbath rule and all the other rules are the Orthodox Jew who would have nothing to do with the Gentile. He would be declared unclean if his daughter married a Gentile. They would have her funeral because to them she would be considered dead. So these are people that would not deal with Gentiles, would not deal with people that did not follow and keep the strict law. They considered them to be unclean, and they leave out of the synagogue and they immediately join forces with the Herodians. Who are the Herodians? These are the soldiers for King Herod, who have to deal with Romans and everybody else on a regular basis who would be highly unclean. But because of their anger and their hatred for Jesus, they violated their own law of mingling with the unclean just to get back at him, to destroy him, to plot to kill him. Blinded by their own anger, they didn't even realize they're joining enemies with the unclean folks. And they're joining forces with the unclean folks to destroy someone that violated another law. Doesn't make sense. A lot of what we do in life doesn't make sense. And so I love this passage because it gives you a clear look into how we can become so absorbed in our anger and our hatred that we just can't see clearly, which is why it is so important for us to not be angry. It's so important for us to be forgiving. That's why all these things are stressed over and over and over again in the book of Psalms, throughout Ephesians, in the other books where Paul is really trying to lay down what our behavior ought to be. To get rid of that stuff, because it's like, it is the disease. It is the germ that just spreads and infests the entire body. The anger, the hate. And so when we start bringing a little bit more love and joy and just, it is what it is kind of attitude, then life gets better. And so how do we start? How do we start just kind of making ourselves feel more comfortable, more confident about who we are, about being well? One of the quickest things, and I was going to do raw hummus today, and I brought the lemons, and I just up from, I keep my lemons in the window downstairs to keep them cool. So I brought them up. I just didn't feel like juicing them, and I was like, you know what else can I do that's quick? And not only that, I was feeling a little depleted because this has been, the last 10 days have been a challenge. It's like that here lately. But it's okay. So what do we do when we're challenged? We have to look and see, okay, what's causing this or whatever. It's because I'm not having a chance to put my little breakfast together like I want to, my little fruit pie. I had consumed both of those, and one was frozen. Actually, usually I freeze things and they stay in the freezer forever. I actually went through both of them. And so I had some things to do this morning, and I just needed something quick. So I'm going to be kind and make this again for you, because I already have like a bunch in the refrigerator. I'll show you what it looks like. Put this in a plastic jar. This is what we're going to do, and I want to address some things as well. This is our green smoothie, because people talk about green smoothies all the time. And this is going to go against everything you've heard and believe, where people start mixing. So delightful. When people start mixing fruits and vegetables together, and you cannot do that. They have two very different digestive times, fruits and vegetables. So when they're consumed, especially by liquid, one or the other is going to ferment in the stomach. The other piece is that you're dealing with the acid and the alkaline issues associated with the two. So one is going to kind of like zero balance out the other. It's like you make a deposit, then you make a withdrawal that's more than a deposit. You've got a deficiency there. And that is what happens when we do fruits and vegetables. That's another lecture. I just want to tell you, a green smoothie is good, but not when it's done with fruits and vegetables. Bearing in mind that the apple and the lemon are what we call neutral fruits. They can be mixed with vegetables. And then, of course, once in a blue moon, that's cool, but most people that are doing these green smoothies with your kale and bananas, or kale and pineapple, or kale and whatever, they're doing it on a daily basis. And I often look at people and I just say, is that working for you? Because if you're doing a smoothie correctly, if you're doing what we're going to do today, usually you won't have a stomach problem. Most of that matter will just kind of go away, therefore there won't be the extra matter that can be seen with the eyes. So this is my basic smoothie. Now remember, you always have options. So a lot of times I tell people you can do what you have. If you don't have something, then you don't have it, but you can do whatever you have. So I knew I needed to do something, so it was based on what I had. I like to start my smoothies when I do this type of smoothie. I like to start, so we have some superfoods here. We have green powder, we have sea moss with, I always get the bladderwrack and burdock added to it. But here's my golden, I always tell people that know me from 20 years ago, when I started doing these health lectures, I say, if I have to be stuck on an island, what would Dr. Dallas be stuck on the island with? Spirulina, sea moss, and bee pollen. With that, I think This is when Survivor first started coming out. It says I could survive 30 days without those three. Sea moss, bee pollen, and spirulina powder. Or, spirulina powder, seaweed, but basically spirulina powder has so many good things in it. So I usually start, when I'm adding the spirulina and sea moss, I usually like to start with pomegranate juice. I usually got some pomegranate juice, and I'll add the acai juice to it. Didn't have any acai juice. Costco got rid of the pomegranate juice and replaced it with a Kirkland pomegranate juice. And I don't know if I just got a bad bottle, but it was not what I want to do. So you go with what you have. So we always have black cherry juice in the refrigerator because it is great for inflammation for people that are doing a lot of sports. So start with some of that, and then we always have fresh juice because we do fresh juice on a regular basis. So this is pineapple, ginger, and honey. So we're gonna add some pineapple, ginger, honey. So typically I do quite a bit so that I have a couple of these containers at the end, quite a bit. And then what I can do, like this one I filled halfway, the other one is in a glass mason jar, which I'll just drink that on its own. But this one is filled halfway for the express purpose of I saw some ripe bananas in the windowsill that need to pretty much be consumed quickly. So my thought was fill this halfway after I drank a cup. And then I'll chop these bananas in the morning and I'll dump them in. I'll dump in some cashews and some soaked walnuts. I'll probably dump some fresh berries in there, and I'll eat that for breakfast tomorrow. And so we have our pineapple and ginger honey juice. We have some black cherry, or you can use black tart cherry. Do not use your beet with turmeric in there. So that's what we start with. So here's how you want to make your juice. Oh, I meant to do something and I didn't. So I have flax seeds here. This is like the 5th time I've tried to do this. So I have flax seeds here. These are my flax seeds. And as I've told you guys before, you want to do 3 to 5 tablespoons of grounded flax seeds a day. Now you can go into any health food store and you can purchase you some grounded flaxseed meal. Do not do that, because microscopically you will not be able to see the fungus that grows on that very quickly when they've been grounded. So what I do is I buy my own grounded flax seeds. I keep them in glass jars, hanging around somewhere. And then I pour out what I think I'm going to consume in a week. And so this is usually about how much I'll consume in a week. So what I'll do is I'll put these in my Blendtec blender, dump those in, grind it on high. It takes like 2 seconds. So I have grounded flax seeds, pour it back into the container, and then on a daily basis, I sprinkle 3 to 4 tablespoons, whether it's in a smoothie or on the top of my salad. I put it definitely in my little fruit cereal things that I do. So I forgot to do that. I don't want to pour that out, then have to dry it and then do it all over. But now you get it. I'll do it after I clean that and I'll have some for tomorrow. But you can also, what I was going to do is add that along with the other superfoods in here. So you can put 3 to 4 tablespoons of that in your blender as well. So what are we going to start with? So what you do is you start with your liquid first. And then we have what we've talked about before, lecithin, which is great for the brain, which is great for B12. And then we have the bee pollen. I don't even have enough time to talk about the nutrients in bee pollen in terms of the live enzymes and just everything that it does. I know some of y'all folks out there don't do honey. You don't do anything because of the bee doesn't, yeah. Okay, the Bible talks about honey and bees, so for me, that's good enough. Then I have some hemp seeds here for people that are doing, more exercises in terms of weight training and things like that. So this gives you some really free protein. And then the chia seeds. Notice that the chia seeds are grounded. They're just like flax seeds. They do almost nothing for you when consumed whole. Especially flax seeds. So you have to grind them down to a powder. So I had plenty of chia seeds because I do those every week. Same thing. You only want to grind these things down 7-10 days max. You know, whatever you're not going to consume in 7 or 10 days, leave it in the whole form until you get to a point where you know you're going to be using that. So then I just sprinkle all of those in. No, it's not a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons. It's just some. I just put some in there. This is not as large of a smoothie. I usually put a little more of the lecithin than anything else. You just can't go wrong with that. Then we have our favorite, Black Mission figs and Turkish figs. Why are these our favorite? Because when we open them up, you see they have 1,000,000 yellow seeds in them. Anything that has a variety of seeds in it, a lot of seeds I should say, is always going to be good for you. Why? Because the more seeds it has, the more fiber, natural dietary fiber it contains, which is why raspberries are one of the best things that you can have per quarter cup of raspberries. So you get all those millions of little raspberry seeds stuck in your teeth, but it's a good thing. So we have the Turkish, the Black Mission figs, and it's something in the shell of the seed itself, which is to be something that parasites, kills parasites, and they hate that, and the same thing with cancer fighting qualities. So we can put a couple of the Black Mission figs in, and again, you're getting a ton of dietary fiber added when you do that. These should be soaked, but since we're putting them in liquid and we're grinding them, it doesn't matter that much. I just wanted to show you some variations that you could use. A couple of, you know, they have this little stick thing on them. So you just want to pull that off, pluck it off on both of them. The Turkish figs, same thing. You open them up, you see 1,000,000 of the yellow seeds. So good for you. And then the best thing, figs taste like sugar. They're like totally sweet. Children totally love them. So it doesn't make sense. I've seen people do fruit smoothies and they put honey or sugar or something crazy like that in there, when you can just add these things and it way takes it over the sweet chart. But my favorite, not just because of the amount of sweetness that comes along, these are medjool dates. You can use either one. These are a little more expensive. Then you have to pull them apart to take the seed out. But dates, in addition to the fact that it's like adding a bowl of sugar to the smoothie, is that the minerals that they contain, the magnesium, the copper that they add that are hard to get from other foods, you're actually about to drink it, so it's going to go directly into your bloodstream, because typically when we're not well, it has something to do with the dysfunctionality of our gastrointestinal system. So this way it bypasses that because it's liquid, which is why they always give you IVs when they're trying to get you well quickly. So we just put, I usually go with maybe 8 to 10 dates, because you're going to put fresh fruit in as well as frozen fruit, so it's going to be sweet enough. So notice what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is I'm putting the hard objects in, because make sure you get these seeds out. These will kill a blender. The date seeds, they're just like ferocious. So I'm also adding some raw cashews. Gives it like a meaty kind of thickness to it, which makes you feel like you're not drinking something, but you're actually eating something. It's like you can chew your smoothie then. So that had a little ump to it because of the dates and the figs. So then you want to just get that going a tad bit, and then you want to move into adding your powders. So with the spirulina powder, just if you're doing like one smoothie, which is maybe 12 ounces or something, you would use 1 heaping teaspoon. This is going to be almost a blender full, so at least 32 ounces, more like 48. So I'll put 4 heaping teaspoons. I don't think you can use too much spirulina powder. I want you guys to see 5 milligrams of calcium, 1.6 milligrams of iron, and a whopping 56 milligrams of potassium in 1 heaping teaspoon, 1 level teaspoon actually. Of course, no fat, less than 35 milligrams of sodium, and a whopping 2 grams of protein. So when I first went vegan and I was still doing bodybuilding, bam, and people were asking me, where are you getting your protein from? I used to be like, 1 teaspoon of spirulina powder will give you more digestible, assimilatable protein than a 4-ounce piece of chicken breast. Why? Because unless you're eating that chicken breast in its raw state, that protein is not something the body can readily assimilate. And by the time you cook it and do everything else to it, not only is it not protein that the body can readily assimilate, but most of it's going to come right outside of you, in your urine, into the toilet, along with the rest of your heart waste money. So now, I'm not going to put, this is the matcha powder. It's really good. You can add it to smoothies. We don't need any of that. That would be kind of an overkill. Some people like the taste of it. I usually put this in my cold brew tea when I do my water and I just let everything soak. That's what I use that. But I just wanted you to see it and recognize it as another power superfood, giving you 23 milligrams of potassium, 6 milligrams of calcium, which the body really needs calcium, and most of us are calcium deficient. So that's the greatest thing going here. And the fact that it's green means that it cleans the blood. So now here, bam, bam, bam. Bladder whack. Bladder whack for people that are trying to lose weight. Bladder whack, bladder, 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 bladder whack. This is what you, smells like the sea for sure. In addition to the sea moss that smells like the sea. And burdock root. Burdock will keep you from getting sick. So we'll just put a couple of teaspoons. You don't need a lot of this in there. It's a good powder. Get the organic signature blend. So just because you want to know that the sea moss came from the better sea waters. This is, let's look and see. 1,500 milligrams of Irish sea moss, 1,500 milligrams of burdock powder, and 1,500 milligrams of bladderwrack per 1 scoop. That scoop is probably more like a quarter of a teaspoon, the little scooper that comes with that. And so the benefits that you get from this, we've talked about sea moss in terms of your immune system, your skin, your hair, your eyes, you know, keep you from getting, you know, just all kinds of stuff. So that's that. Then I'm going to just take these ripened bananas and add them as well. You don't ever want to eat your bananas unless they have maybe 25-30% brown spots, and more importantly that the tips have some brownness to them. When the tips are green, they're unripe, and when they're unripe, basically it's pure sugar and it's not going to do anything but make you fat. People used to say, I don't like bananas because they make me fat, because that's because they were eating the unripe bananas. When the banana peel is like that, it's ripe. You see how nice and smooth that was? It was nothing brown on the inside. So it's just the ripening of the banana. You don't see any fat monkeys. So you can just put that foolishness to rest. Then we have some organic natural peanut butter, where basically they took raw peanuts and grinded them down. So sometimes you can add some peanut butter to your smoothie. It gives it a nice flavor and even more digestible, assimilatable protein. But you don't want to use a lot. I don't use a lot. People that are into chocolate, you could put some cocoa nibs in there. I definitely am not into that. So we do that. See how easy this is? And then we want to give it a small little grind here just to get that powder mixed in so you don't have lumps in there. Now that you have your green monster, then you want to add your frozen fruit. So today we're just adding some, maybe a cup or so of frozen mango, and then some mixed berries here. They're blueberries, bosamberries, and my favorite, raspberries, and some ice that came out of me not wrapping that well when I put it back the last time. And I usually use way more frozen fruit than that. You can add some strawberries. So look at the volume here, guys. So that's pretty much filled to the top. It's a pretty smooth consistency. If you want it to be thicker, you simply add some more frozen fruit. That's pretty thin to me. Usually mine comes out where I have to spoon it out. And then what you can do is you can actually freeze it if you want. For people that, I'm always sensitive to people that are just, their time. They just don't have time to do stuff. And so you can make this in batches like this and just put them into some plastic containers that are freezable, or ones that you can put in the freezer. And then you can do a lot of things. So now that we have it, usually you guys have seen my breakfast cereal that I do. So I take blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, rinse them, put them in a bowl with some sliced ripe bananas. Then I can pour some of this over it, or I can pour a half a cup of cherry juice or something over it, or some pineapple juice, or nothing. You know, sometimes I'll take a ripened mango or a ripened peach, and that gives it enough, you know, water or juice to make it, you know, very easy to consume. It's easy to consume anyway, but sometimes you just kind of want it to feel like you're having an oatmeal or some kind of soft thing. So a lot of times I use this to pour over top of things. And the second thing is for dessert. So at night you can do the same thing. You can chop up some fresh fruit, pour this over the top, maybe put a teaspoon or so of shredded coconut, add some raisins or some small chopped dates on it, or some of the chocolate cocoa nibs. Or so we can do that, and then you can have it for midday. For those of you who are into intermediate fasting, this is a great way to get that liquid in, but get like a ton of nutrients in. And so I'm a strong advocate of eating, chewing, you know, masticating my food. A whole apple is really good when your immune system and dietary system is already working the way that it should be working. But if you've got to go liquid, you want to do smoothies for a couple of days, you aren't to the point where you can fast off of just some liquid apple juice or something like that, this is a great way to do it, because you are killing your system with nutrients. I mean, this is like nutrient overload, but it's good. I used to tell people, so I would have a container like this full at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go out and run the marathon the next day and never have to drink or eat anything during the run. My marathon run is probably a little longer than yours. So just sustainability, I call this sustainability food. And it's really just really good for you. And what color does it end up being? Green. And what do green foods do? They clean the blood. And where does disease and stuff start from? Its origin is in the blood. So that's what we want to do. And so this is just a way of doing the right thing. You know, it's just, you know, it's servicing your system, your immune system. It's servicing your organs and your glands and your tissues. I mean, we're just doing all the things that we ought to do for the needs of our body. And just like Jesus did everything that he could for the need of man, even if it appeared that it was violating the law, because he always kept the end in the center of his mind. And that is what he is exhorting you and I to do. So as we're going out and meeting the needs of our fellow man and being kind and polite to them and doing what we can to offer a helping hand, let us help ourselves with maintaining the integrity of our immune systems as we go into a fall season, as we look upon the unknown in terms of viruses and things like that. All you have to worry about is keeping you well. So make sure that you're getting plenty of nutrient-dense food. All of this food is packed with nutrients. When we start talking about donuts and bagels and things like that, not only are you not getting good nutrients, you're getting a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't do the body well. I hope that's been helpful. Looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.